So it is my extreme pleasure to introduce Clarissa Constantine. She is an only child who had a tough relationship with her mom. During college at the University of Hartford, which happens to be in my backyard basically, she began what would turn into a decades-long career as a test prep coach. She's helped thousands of kids around the world navigate the college and grad school admissions processes. Along the way, she's joked that she sometimes finds herself playing the role of therapist more than tutor, helping the kids manage the stresses of life. But no matter how many young adults she helped, she longs for a closer relationship with her mom. Unfortunately, that didn't come to pass before her mom passed in November of 2019. She's driven to help other families avoid the heartache, the lost years, and the regret that she, and most likely her mom too, experienced. In addition to test prep coaching and dreaming of the ways to help parent and tween connect, and the ways for her program, Parent Tween Connection, will help families. She's also a certified life coach who helps teens learn concepts like goal setting, self-compassion and self-esteem, mindfulness, and growth mindsets. So without further ado, Clarissa, take it away.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So if you do have questions or thoughts along the way, please do go ahead and chat them to me. I do have the chat window open. I am definitely an auditory and kinesthetic person. So if you can tell, I'm standing because I don't sit very well. I am definitely one of those who was always at the back of the classroom because my last name started with S. My maiden name started with S. And I was always also the tallest kid. So I was always in the back. So thankfully that worked well because I could stand up and not block anybody. So anyway, so my first question for you, the term mindset has kind of become like a buzzword lately. And I'm curious what you think of when you hear the term mindset. What does it mean to you? Either type or pop on microphone, that's fine. Elizabeth, attitude. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think I see Anna typing. Not sure. Your focus, absolutely. And there's many different ways we can go with that, right? So here is how dictionary.com actually defines it. If I can find my forward button that is hidden by my people pictures. Here we go. Yeah, absolutely. Growth or closed, or growth or fixed, right, Denise? So that's part of where we're going. So this is how dictionary.com defines it. It's your attitude, disposition, or mood. It can also be like your inclination and like kind of what your tendencies are. So if you have not heard of Dr. Dweck, Carol Dweck, I do have a picture of it there, but this book is phenomenal. Dr. Dweck is recognized as one of the leaders in the psychology of mindset, psychology of success. And basically, she established this distinction between what we call a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So as you take a look at this, and I can include this also, this image in the email that we send out and links to this, basically, if you have a fixed mindset, or like you said, Denise, like a closed mindset, you kind of come at the world going, look, what I am is what I am. My intelligence is static. My skills are static. It's kind of like, if you believe, I kind of joke around, like, if God fits into your term and you're like, okay, or into your world, and you have the philosophy that, before you were born, God gave you a cup of intelligence and a half a cup of good looks and a 3/4 of a cup of social skills, then that's where it's at and that's it. And you're just done. And that's how it's going to be. If that's the case, you tend to avoid challenges because you don't ever want to look dumb. You don't ever want to look like you're less than what people think that you are. So taking on something that might be a challenge for you isn't necessarily a guarantee that you're going to be good at it. And this can certainly have some limiting impacts long-term. I was talking with a girlfriend of mine last night who grew up in a home where, straight A's were the norm. They were the expectation. And she's in her mid-40s now looking at launching a business. And she's facing some very real limits in her beliefs about but I don't know I can do it. And if I don't know I can do it, I'm not able to take that step forward. So this can absolutely have lifelong impact. When we hit obstacles, we give up easily. We see effort like, well, why bother trying? Because I know I can't do it. So trying isn't going to make it any different. We also tend to be kind of resistant to criticism or feedback or things that can help us grow, because we're like, whatever, why do you just do nothing but criticize me? I can't change it anyway. And probably the piece that impacts our interactions with others the most is the fact that we really are intimidated or threatened or sometimes even resentful of other people's success. Because it's like, well, that's great, they can do it, but I'm just as smart as I am, or I'm just as capable as I am. I'm never going to see that same kind of success. A growth mindset, on the other hand, focuses, in the summary that I've kind of come to with it, is that it's more about recognizing the process that we're going through rather than the end goal. We tend to believe that intelligence and innate capacities, abilities, natural gifts, if you will, can actually be developed. We tend to embrace challenges if we have more of a growth mindset, because we're like, hey, you know, failure is actually learning. Like, there's no such thing as failing. I learned something in the process. We see effort as a way to actually get better at something or being able to master our skills. We look at feedback from other people as just that, feedback, not criticism, even when it's offered maybe more harshly than is deserved. But we look for opportunities to grow, and we tend to take more ownership and more responsibility in our own growth as a result, because we believe that there's something that we can do about it. So I'm going to propose that everybody here today has at least some part of their belief system that is grounded in the belief that we can change mindset. And that means that we have a growth mentality, because if you weren't here to learn something about how to have a better relationship or interact better with the kids in our lives, why are we here? We'd be like, nope, it's what it is, we're done. So if we can influence our own mindset, then we can also influence the mindsets of the teenagers we interact with, whether it's like our own kiddos, which, by the way, Denise, I can't believe your kid is 13 already. Like, how did that happen? Right. But then, you know, the kids that we tutor, the kids that come into our dojos, the kids that we mentor, right? Or whether they're in our classrooms or not, we can influence them as well. So what we want to think about is the messages that we're sending to them. And at the risk of screwing it up, because I don't want to look like a failure in front of people, I'm actually going to quote a couple of things from Dr. Dweck directly about the messages that we give to our kids, or the kids in our world. So I'm curious whether you have either been on the receiving end of this, maybe you've offered feedback like this, or you've heard it. So statements like, wow, you learned that so quickly, you're really smart. Or, look at that drawing, he's the next Picasso, he's phenomenal. Or, wow, you're brilliant, you got an A without even studying. Anybody hear that along the way? Or said it on us like, no. Well, here's the thing. Those are fantastic things to say to kids, aren't they? Because we're recognizing them for how good they are at whatever they're good at. Here's the catch. If we say, wow, you're so smart, you got that so quickly. Well, what do kids hear? Ooh, I'm smart because I learned that quickly. If I don't learn it quickly, then I'm not smart. Or, you're a really good artist. Look at that. You're the next Picasso. Wow. I'm not going to try to draw anything that's a harder drawing to create, because if I don't do it well, then they're not going to think I'm as good of an artist. So here's the challenge. If we focus so much on the end goal and we're not focusing on the process along the way, we're taking these like monstrous jumps to the end, and kids that ends up being like hey, that's a fixed mindset. If I can't produce that result, then I'm not smart, capable, talented, worthy, whatever. So what Dr. Dweck proposes here is that praising the end result and like the intelligence and their innate abilities actually provides more, or creates more harm than it does good. And ultimately, at least in our culture, can harm their performance. So what's the proposed alternative? Instead, How many of you have heard the phrase, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, or it's about the journey, not the destination? This is what we can really do just in terms of our direct interaction with them and the words that come out of our mouths. All right. What do we want to focus on? The more we focus on the process and the effort that they put in, that's what we end up praising. That helps develop the growth mindset. I think it was Elizabeth, you were talking about this earlier, right? Where you were talking about breaking down and going, hey, what are the steps that they're taking? So, you know, Anna, we're both musicians, right? We always got accolades for, wow, you played the Mozart clarinet concerto so beautifully. Did anybody ever praise like what was below the water on the iceberg meme, right? Wow, it sounds like your scales are getting more comfortable. Your fingers are really learning where they're supposed to go. Nobody says that, right? Nobody says, you know, that they're praising the, you know, long tones to get the bow on the string, you know, on every string to sound consistent, or the number of tendus and rondejams that dancers do in dance class, right? Nobody ever praises that. So let's look for opportunities to do that. Talk about the process. So things like, wow, I love seeing how much emotion you put into your rehearsals. I can tell how much you love dancing. Or, you know, something actually that my dad used to say is like, I love just listening to you practice because I can tell that you love doing it. Right? It wasn't, I mean, yes, he was like, hey, second movement of Mozart was great at the concert, right? But I remember hearing things like, oh, you know, I love listening to you practice because I know you love it. My husband's a sports performance coach, and he sees this with his athletes all the time, where the parents, who themselves may have been competitive athletes as well when they were younger, you know, they try to slip into coach mode about like, well, why weren't you first? You know, second place is first loser. We had somebody yesterday saying that their partner was like, you don't win the silver, you lose the gold. Well, that's still all end oriented. If we can come back and be like, wow, you totally hit the gym consistently, and I can see how much more comfortably you're running, or wow, look at the progress that you've made because of the effort that you've put in. If we focus more on the effort and the strategies, the end results will come, but we're not so focused on the end results that we're impacting their ability to make changes along the way. And then, like Elizabeth was talking about earlier, that metacognition is thinking about thinking. It's thinking about the process that goes into whatever your end goal is after a performance, going, hey, what worked well? What do you want to keep? What do you want to let go of and try something different? This is something that I do with my test prep coaching. I work with high school kids for SAT and ACT, but I also work with college age students and adults who are looking to go back to grad school. And every time we do a drill, I always ask them, what worked well in this process? Because you're never going to see this question again. I have to coach them on processes. So like, what worked really well about this process? What do you want to keep? What do you want to change for next time? So focusing more, really emphasizing on the process, what they want to keep, what they want to change to get to the end goal is one of the most important things that we can do. So then Dr. Dweck goes into this conversation as well in the section that she talks about parents and teachers and coaches, where we talk about what do we do when kids fail? How do we approach that when they don't achieve the goals that they set out for them to achieve? And she gives an example of a 9-year-old who started gymnastics and goes to her first gymnastics meet and wins nothing, places for nothing, like walks away, not a ribbon, not a medal, nothing. And of course she's dejected. What kid comes back from a competition and doesn't walk away with anything and like, yay, I didn't win anything? None of us does, right? So she proposes a few ways that parents could potentially respond. Well, what do? You tell her, well, I thought you were the best. We all know folks who've said that. We may have even said it, and Anna's all like, I don't know. Why, Anna? What's not so fantastic about that? Oh, you're still muted, Anna. Go ahead and unmute.
Sorry.
There you go.
They don't think that they did anything wrong then. They think, oh, well, then I really should have gotten those awards. My mom said I should have gotten the awards. Why didn't I get the awards? Those other people, those judges, they were wrong. Those other athletes weren't as good as me. And it's a bad progressive mindset.
Absolutely. And that can be the same kind of results that we get. Exactly. It discredits mom as a judge, or potentially discredits the judges, right? But that's the same kind of mindset that we can get if we're like, oh man, you were robbed. How is that, placing personal responsibility on us? It doesn't. And yeah, this whole entitlement thing, that's a whole other conversation, right? So how many times do we actually hear a parent say, well, a parent, coach, mentor, okay, I say parent, but like any of the adults in the village, how often do we hear them be like, well, you didn't win because you didn't deserve it. Ouch. That hurts, right? And maybe we don't want to say it in quite those same terms, but maybe we want to say, well, hey, you're the youngest on the team. Maybe not like chronologically youngest, but you're the newest to the team. You've been doing gymnastics the least length of time. You haven't earned it yet. You haven't mastered your skills enough. You haven't again, processes. What are the pieces that haven't gone into the process enough yet to help you get to that end goal? So when we're looking at supporting them, oh, absolutely, Elizabeth. The other girls, they were more consistent. They showed up to the gym more frequently. They paid attention to their coach more frequently, right? How many times I've heard my husband say with his athletes, and how I've said with my kids, you're just not coachable. You're not willing to talk to let me give you insight on the process that needs to change. So if I could leave you with one tidbit today about what can we do to help foster a more growth-oriented mentality among our younger generation, is help them focus more on that process. And like Elizabeth was saying, give them the opportunity to think. They just don't think as quickly as we do. Our brains are fully developed, theirs are not. Give them that space and really focus on what are the steps that we need to take to get there. Cool beans? Thoughts, questions? I know I end up saying cool beans and coolio. I know when my students start typing that back to me in my classes that I'm like, oh, maybe I need to change up my positivity here. Anna's like, no, I like cool beans. All right. So one other tidbit that I want to throw in here when it comes to growth mindset, it comes partly from personal experience in terms of my own experience with my mom, but also a lot of what I've seen with a lot of my kids, a lot of the athletes that my husband has coached. I know that all of us in mentor, aunt or uncle, teacher, parent, grandparent roles, we want what's best for our kids. The challenge comes in when what we believe is best for our kids isn't necessarily the same as what they believe is the best for them. Now, I am not going to say mom is always right, because I don't think mom is always right. My dad will tell you, I didn't always think mama was right. But there's a couple of things that can come up here when we're really trying to help guide kids in a direction that we feel is positive. Number one is the potential of them receiving the message that our love and our support is conditional. So one of the arenas that I see this come up a lot is when we're teaching morals and values that are often rooted in a religious basis. And when we're like, this is the behavior that I expect, often what is missing is, I will still love you even when, or even if your behavior doesn't match what I'm coaching you on or what I'm teaching you. I also see it a lot in the realm of academics, in families and cultures where school is and good grades are a primary focus. I expect straight A's, but I'm going to love you if you get a B. I'm going to love you if you get a C, and I'm going to help you figure out what to do when you step out of this box. So be aware in the messaging that we're sending to our youth that, like, yes, these are the patterns of behavior that we expect, and I'm still going to love you when you don't fall into that pattern of behavior. because they're going to. They will fall out of that, whether it's they marry somebody of a different faith, or they go down a different academic route than you would like, or they go down a different professional route than you think is appropriate for them. Not having that safety net, or not knowing that their adults in their world are a safety net, even when they step out of that, can absolutely be life-threatening. So take that for what it's worth, and just acknowledge the, bring something in that says, I love you even when. Let's see. Yes. Ooh. For those of you not looking at chat, Elizabeth says, when she asked her 7th graders if their parents loved them when they got poor grades, they said, yeah, but they love us more when they get good grades. That's an example of conditional love. So food for thought. Just, keep in mind, we know that we're well-intentioned, and sometimes those intentions don't necessarily come across as supportively as we might like. I don't know if any of you saw this. Actually, I'm going to pause on this for a second. I have a mantra behind me. So we all know that obesity in this country is a challenge, yes? And you're probably going, Clarissa, what the heck does obesity have to do with mindset? I would argue that for many of us, we have become a country of bubbleheads. We walk around thinking only about this and like what's going on all up in here. And we don't necessarily pay attention. I know, right? Da-da-da-da. We don't necessarily pay attention to how the rest of it impacts this. So when we look at these numbers and we see that 1 in 5 teenagers in this country qualifies as overweight or obese, we immediately think healthcare costs. We think diabetes. We think about some of the psychosocial aspects of things. But here's an interesting statistic. Studies have shown that there's actually an inverse relationship between BMI, which I will argue, with a background as a personal trainer, BMI is an imperfect evaluation, but it is an evaluation. There is an inverse relationship between BMI and academic performance. The higher the weight goes, the lower the grades go. And of course, this then becomes a question of, well, what's the chicken or the egg? Well, we definitely have psychological and psychosocial impacts here, which all tie back to mindset, right? Or tie into mindset. If a kid is getting bullied, they're going to have lower self-esteem. They're going to have a lesser likelihood of believing that things will work out okay. And keep in mind, one of the conversations that we had yesterday came up, I mentioned Elizabeth as a mom and a stepmom. She said, when you're dealing in a step family situation, you've got to take the long game. You've got to look at the long-term perspective. Part of the reason that we deal with the suicide rates that we do with our teenagers, you see people going, oh, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The problem isn't just that. It's that our teenagers can't see the long picture. They just physiologically, their brains aren't there yet. They can't see the long term. So when we're looking at brain development and body, we've got brains, bodies, mental perspective. We've got to take a look, obviously, at the psychological side of things. And this is what I have behind me. Exercise is the single most powerful tool you have to optimize brain function. Here's another book for you. I have it there, but it's called Spark by Dr. John Rady. He is a Harvard psychiatrist. And this entire book is a conglomeration or a compilation of studies about how exercise impacts the brain, whether we're talking brain development for teenagers, whether we're talking seniors, working to mitigate Alzheimer's, dementia, that kind of thing. And then for everybody in the mid-range, where we're dealing with mental health and or lack of mental health. Exercise is the single most powerful tool that we have to optimize our brain function. Think about the psychological impacts as well, though, right? You have an overweight kid, gets in the gym, starts moving, even just walking, starts dropping some weight if it's appropriate for their body, and their confidence starts increasing, or they start doing weightlifting, or like Anna, I'm sure you see this in the dojo, right? With martial arts. You see a kid who's either overweight or even on the other end, the underweight as well. They start gaining this sense of power, which absolutely leads into self-confidence, but it's not just about that. There are actual physiological changes that happen in the brain as a result of movement. So one of the most fascinating studies that he references in here is about a 0-hour PE program that they ran in Naperville, Illinois, wherein they had kids come in and actually do exercise before school started. And then they tracked their progress through a literacy program or literacy assessments that they did throughout the year. And what they found was that the kids who participated in 0-hour PE and worked at 80 to 90% of their theoretical maximum heart rate for as little as 10 to 15 minutes, they saw a 17% increase in their literacy scores, as opposed to less than 11% for the kids who didn't participate. So it was 50% more improvement from 10 to 15 minutes of cardiovascular exercise before they sat down to study. And that was across gender, that was across socioeconomic background, that was across starting scores. So that's pretty compelling. But why? What's actually going on? How many of you have heard the term neurotransmitters? Yeah? Okay. There are all these happy chemicals in our brains. Some of them help lift us up. Some of them help us downregulate. Some of them help us stay fairly middle of the road, right? So when we get into talking about medications, and for the record, I am not saying that medications are bad. I am not a healthcare professional in that variety. I am saying absolutely talk to medical practitioners for support in that arena. What I can tell you though, is that with all of these neurotransmitters in our brains, exercise helps to balance them out. So exercise can absolutely be an effective part of managing mental health. But it's not just balancing the neurotransmitters. Studies have indicated that as exercise increases, so does our brain's production of BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And the more BDNF we have, the faster our brain processes. So what we find is that we learn more quickly and we retain more of what we learn after we exercise. One of the studies that Dr. Rady references was actually a study in Germany back in 2007 where they asked folks to learn some vocabulary words, and then they went and exercised for 15 or 20 minutes and then learned more vocabulary words. And what they found was that people learned vocab words 20% faster after exercise than they did before. So guess what I tell all of my students to do before they come to a tutoring session or a class? You get out there and go for a walk. Now, of course, especially in my LSAT, like my law school bound students, I put the legal term of make sure that exercise is appropriate for you. Please consult your medical professional before embarking on an exercise program. But if it is healthy and safe for you, exercise is an immediate, easily accessible tool that we can use to help our kids improve, not just for our kinesthetic learners as well. It's for all of our learners. So Anna, did you recognize a change in that? I see that you made the comment somewhere along the way. You said, oh yeah, you've seen a big difference in your son's grades when he plays basketball, but while he's waiting for the bus. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it absolutely was, the moving around as we wait for the bus. Now since we're not doing the bus because of COVID, we're in person learning. I'm taking him to school and we don't have that extra time because we have to go wait in that long line. And so, yeah, I've definitely seen a difference in him. And then when a better homework, when they do Taekwondo, if we go straight from school to Taekwondo, then homework is better in the evening when they're more focused on it after doing that.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the same thing for us. This isn't just about our kids. This is about us, right? That's why when we first started today, when I was tripping over my words for a couple of minutes, I was like, wow, can you tell I haven't been to the gym yet? I totally notice the difference on the days that I get up and I go to the gym versus the days that I don't. And yet the cozy, warm bed is so alluring sometimes.
I have one other thing. We also, the schools in our area, for our Taekwondo, we have a schools program where we go in and do a week of Taekwondo in the schools for every gym class. And we have several schools in one of the school districts that have us come the week before they do their I-STEP tests or their standardized testing, because the principal has noticed that when we come do that week and we work with them on exercise and the 3 types of focuses, their eyes, their bodies, and their brains, they have better test scores that next week.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
That is so fabulous. And I bet discipline issues go way down too.
100%. Well, because kids are getting, I mean, there's also that energy expulsion that, especially us kinesthetic folks, right? We're like fidgeting. If I had $1, I was saying to my dad the other day, I was like, if I had $1 for every time my mother said to me, stop fidgeting, sit still. Oh my God, I'd be a millionaire. I'd be living in Fiji. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I move. It's what I do.
Can I just ask Anna a question? Anna, does your son know that his grades change when he exercises or does basketball in the morning?
I don't know that he does.
That might be a very good thing to point out to him, because then he has a little bit of control over his grades.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, and what I love about exercise, right? Like, I'm really passionate about equity, equal access, providing access to resources, regardless of socioeconomic and gender whatever, right? We can all move. Granted, physical limitations need to be accommodated or need to be adjusted for, but regardless of your socioeconomic background, you can get up and walk. And literally as little as 10 to 15 minutes of exercising, of walking, can have these kinds of impacts. And it's easy. Yes, it does mean getting up earlier, Anna, right? But it's like, hey, if this is the single most important thing we can do, or the easiest thing that we can do, can we adjust to fit it in somehow, some way along the way? So you can tell I get nerdy about this. Couple of other things and we'll wrap up. So mindfulness. Mindfulness is also a super big buzzword. And a lot of people think it has to be, sitting there and doing yoga and, meditating or whatever. But the reality is that mindfulness fundamentally is simply a state of being here now for 30 seconds. And let's be honest, who couldn't benefit from a little bit of this? So looking at a picture that makes you smile, looking at the beach. Oh, do I miss the water? We don't have so much water here in Colorado as we did in California. But this is another book that I highly recommend. And full disclosure, I actually haven't even finished reading it yet. I grabbed it from the library. I liked it so much that I bought myself a copy of it off of Amazon, and I haven't finished reading it yet. But it's written by a mom who says right in the beginning, she's like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical practitioner. I am a mom who lived this. And she has excerpts from her son about what his experiences were with debilitating anxiety. I love the fact that she has really easy, actionable strategies that you can incorporate along the way. She talks about some nutrition stuff. She talks about supplements. She talks about mindfulness. She talks about exercise, medications. I mean, the gamut. Like, she literally went through everything with her son as they navigated this. But one of the things that she says is these are 8 potential outcomes that you can achieve from mindfulness. And I would argue that our kids aren't the only ones who need these. I know I could use a little more of these in my life. So one of my go-to strategies that I recommend to students has to do with balloons. Let me ask you, if I asked you where your lungs were, where would you point? Good. See, Deborah and Elizabeth learned something yesterday. When most students say to me, oh, they're up here. They think about like a big pufferfish breath. But then I say, wait a second, where do you have ribs? Wherever you have ribs, you have lungs, because your ribs protect your lungs. So that also means that they're further down your chest, they're on your sides, and in fact, they're even in your back as well. Like, that's why getting stabbed in the back, even metaphorically, hurts so badly, because if you get physically stabbed in the back, it's gonna puncture a lung, and that's a problem. So I say, hey, practice what I call balloon breathing. I want you right now to take 2 breaths. I want you to imagine that your lungs are like balloons. And as you inhale, they expand in all directions, front to back, side to side, and dropping down into your belly. Every time I do this, students are like, wow, I feel so much calmer. I'm like, good, do that. Set an alarm on your phone so that you remember to do it 3 or 4 or 10 times a day. 2 or 3 breaths a day, your stress level's gonna come down. But you've got to be intentional about it. So mindfulness is a significant component. Gratitude. This is another one of my favorite resources. This was actually created by my friend Scott Colby. His website is sayitwithgratitude.com. And this is literally a deck, whoops, that I just dropped all over my floor, of cards that have questions on them, much like the images that are there. I start all of my classes and tutoring sessions. Sorry, this one was saying, name 3 things you love or appreciate about someone you don't get along with.
Good one.
Okay, these are great conversation starters with your kids. And here's why gratitude is so important. Most of what you end up being grateful for isn't about you. It's about something outside of you, whether it's, I appreciate that my husband went to work and worked with clients today because that's going to help contribute to the family finances. Or I appreciate that my dad took a piece of furniture to Goodwill because that's a resource for me. It's something, again, outside of me. Or, in many families saying grace before dinner, like thanking the farmers who grew the wheat that is now in the bread that you're consuming. If you're a carnivore, thanking the animal who gave its life for you to be able to have dinner. Those kinds of things, right? It shows you, it expands your brain to things beyond yourself. So gratitude can be an incredibly powerful tool towards that growth mindset. And I honestly think that the most important underlying component to achieving a growth mindset and supporting our kids in developing growth mindsets is connection, having community around us. Because let me tell you something, even though this is something I obviously get passionate about, I'm not perfect. I don't keep it all the time. I have my down times. I have my days where I'm like, everything sucks and I'm done. Tired of being an entrepreneur because my numbers don't look good. I just want to go back to a full-time job and let somebody else pay me for my 40 or my 60 or whatever, right? I'm done. But I have a community around me where I know I can reach out to people and be like, okay, I'm having a tough day. I need you to help lift me up. So what I want you to keep in mind, no matter what, is you're not alone unless you let yourself stay alone. So the more that you can do to connect with other people who are navigating the things that you're navigating, the better positive mindset and growth mindset you're going to be able to attain. So, as moms or, folks in the village, Elizabeth, Deborah, and I all have Facebook groups that are complementary to each other that support families with different aspects. Elizabeth is a goddess among mortals, in my opinion, because she taught middle school for how long? Way longer than I would have lasted, I'll tell you that much.
Most of my 25 years.
There you go. Deborah's Awesome Mom Tribe focuses specifically on moms with teenage daughters. My group, Parent Tween Connection, is kind of runs the gamut. We support folks with all kinds of different things. Find connection, find support, and lean on that support no matter what. So this is how y'all can connect with me. You may recognize that dude on the right-hand side there. He's here on the call with us. That's my daddy-o. And my children. In case I didn't mention it, for those of you who don't know, I'm actually not a mom. But I've got what I lack in depth with individual kids, I certainly make up for in breadth over the last 20 some odd years. So as far as freebies, feel free to join me in the group if you'd like, or I am also a coach. I focus on helping families improve their connection and look at some of the foundations of how to connect with each other, whether it's parents to kids, partners, that kind of deal. So got the link there. But overall, I'm really thankful for all of you joining us, and I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Yeah, Dad, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here for my clarinet recital again.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thanks so much, Clarissa. It's such good information. It is, and hearing it again, today is like, it's just, you keep making connections and you keep reminding yourself and keep thinking, how can I work that in, and where am I failing to work it in, and how can I go back and look at it again?
I said this yesterday, I find it so interesting that we as people with individual differentiated careers are all in the same intersecting area here with this conversation about teenagers and tweenagers. I just find it so interesting that it overlaps like that so perfectly.
Must be good stuff then, must be true, right? We all believe it.
That's right. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll stick around for Q&A for anybody who would like, and we will definitely be sending links to the recordings within the next week. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much for coming, people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Lynn, I'm guessing and trusting that you're still there. Thank you for showing up. Denise,
Yep.
I know the trying to do homework while you're trying to do something else. Hope that worked. Love your earphones, Lynn. Those are awesome.
Oh, those are so cute.
Thank you.
Here's on top. That's awesome.
I just saw them.
Cool.
Thank you all. It was really great. I'm so glad I saw the email today and just was like, oh, that's why they wanted to do this.
Awesome. And where are you, Lynn?
I am in the Bay Area,
Okay.
north of where Elizabeth is.
Cool.
Again, that's the San Francisco Bay Area,
I
just
know this now.
Yes, not the Tampa Bay.
for the context.
Well, wait, I realized the
Thank you.
three of us, so Elizabeth is in California, I'm in Colorado, and Deborah's out in Connecticut. We have the C states covered. And then I was like, oh, and I've lived in all of them. So, all
I'm
right.
sitting here looking at the difference in color between when I started and now, because the sun has gone down. So it's getting dark here. We're about to hit that storm. We're supposed to get 1.5 feet tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. Of snow, you mean?
Better
Yeah.
than me.
What's that? What is that called?
SNOEW.
What does that look like?
What is that?
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
We got it last night, so you can have
Oh,
it.
you did? How much did you get?
I'm in north of Indianapolis, so we got about 5 inches, but my family in Chicago got like 7 to 10.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're expecting tomorrow, which reminds me I better go raise my windshield wipers up.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for all of the information. It was fabulous and gave me a lot to think about, and confirming some of the things I'm already doing and giving me some different perspectives of things that I haven't thought of. So thanks so much and have a great evening.
Thanks,
Great to meet
Anna.
you,
Thanks
Anna.
for being here.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you very
Bye.
much.
Lynn, did you have any questions? Nope. Lynn is out and gone. And there we go. 1, 2, 3.